This is the Penderwicks in Spring, Chapter 16, Dreaming. Dreaming, Batty was in Maine. Hound was chasing a flock of cardinals across the beach, bright flashes of red against gray rocks and blue water. And Sky was there too. No, an older version of Sky, whom Batty knew and yet didn't know. There. The cardinals were safely away, and Batty reached for Hound. "Wake up, honey, please." With a sickening lurch, she crashed awake. No ocean, no Hound, no mother. "No," she said into her pillow. "Batty, are you all right?" Batty rolled over, blinking away her sleep. The person talking to her was Rosalind, but a different Rosalind from the one Batty had last seen, the one to whom she could tell anything. All that was changed now. Batty shut her eyes tight, stuffing her sad secret back into its box, way down deep. "Do you realize it's afternoon already? Every time we looked in on you, you were out cold. Do you feel sick?" Rosalind put her hand on Batty's forehead. "No fever." Batty restlessly jerked her head away. "No fever." "Your stomach?" Batty gently kneaded her stomach. Yes, the giant knot was still there. "It's okay." "You must be hungry, though. You slept through breakfast and lunch. Should I make a sandwich for you before I leave? Eggs and toast?" "No, thanks. I'll get something later." She was hungry. The stomach knot hadn't affected her appetite. First, she needed to be left alone to deal with her ankle and the dirty, ripped pajamas. "Do you know that Jeffrey went back to Boston?" Rosalind asked. Yes. Batty waited for Rosalind to say more. Like that she knew how much Batty must mind, or simply to reassure her that everything would work out. But now Oliver appeared in the doorway, looking pointedly at his watch. "Rosie," he said, "time to go. Long drive back to school." So now he was calling her Rosie. That was a name for family and close friends only. Batty had a quick fantasy of Rosalind standing up to him, telling him never to call her that again. "Just a few more minutes, Oliver." Rosalind once again put her hand on Batty's forehead. "You're sure you're okay? I don't like going away with you, not feeling well." "I feel fine." "We didn't get our chance to talk, I know, but I'll be home again on Saturday. Iantha's going to drive down to bring me and my stuff back," said Rosalind. "Only 6 days. Barely enough time for a new countdown." Batty tried to smile, knowing that's what Rosalind wanted. "And then it's your birthday." And what was already an instinctive or automatic gesture, Batty put her hand on her stomach, trying to soothe the writhing or twisting knot. "I'm not sure I want any presents," she said. "That's crazy," laughed Rosalind. "Of course you want presents." "Rosie," said Oliver, "I've got to go, honey." Rosalind kissed her goodbye and left, taking with her Oliver, whom Batty hoped never, ever to see again for the rest of her life and beyond. She pulled back her covers and cautiously examined her ankle. It was only a little sore, and when she stood up, she found she could walk normally. This was a big relief. Limping would have made it hard to keep her morning misadventure a secret. She also needed to get rid of the ice pack, but that was easy. She emptied it out the window. By now, it was only water. And threw the plastic bag into the closet to join the sweater and boots. Her pajamas were a bigger problem. Dirt could be washed out, but the rips were gaping, far beyond Batty's small mending skills. Briefly, she considered taking them to Jane for repair, but she'd have to make up a story to explain how they'd gotten that way, and lying wouldn't make her feel any better about herself. The pajamas went into the closet, too. Anything else? Socks would cover the telltale scratches on her feet and ankles until they healed. But wait, those drawings from Tess and Nora. If Batty didn't hand them over to Ben, and then those twins approached him with a story about a sister appearing in their backyard with leaves in her hair, he would go berserk. Batty had to give Ben the drawings, along with some sort of an explanation, and bind him to secrecy. She would call a MOPS. The tradition of the MOPS, originally standing for Meeting of the Penderwicks Sisters, had been started long ago by the 3 oldest sisters. Batty had attended plenty of these as she grew up, and so had Ben, although when he was added to the family, sisters had been changed to siblings to accommodate his boyness. A MOPS was always a private meeting with built-in rules about honor and secrecy. Secrecy. Batty was thoroughly sick of secrecy. Taking the drawings with her, she snuck to the bathroom, hoping a shower and clean clothes would give her the sense of a fresh start. But afterward, when she scrutinized or studied her face in the mirror, she couldn't find any traces of her new burden. Maybe she could pull this off. Holding her head high, she went downstairs to test out this new Batty, after Batty, on the family. Parents first, she decided, and found them in their study, peacefully preparing for the coming week at work. "You're up," said Iantha. "How are you, sweetie? Feeling okay?" "I'm good. Hungry." "Hungry is excellent." Her father got up from behind his desk. "Plenty of quesadillas in the fridge. I'll reheat some for you." "I can do it, Daddy. Honest." And she fled, because right now that was all she could handle. Cursing herself for weakness, she pressed onward. Next up was Skye. Not by Batty's choice, but because there she was at the dining room table, under the shadow of Oliver's absurd still lifes, ridiculous still lifes, and working on her computer. She looked sad, but was wearing the calculator watch Geoffrey had given her. That was something, Batty supposed. "Hi." Batty stopped beside Skye's chair. She had to get this over with sometime. "Hi." And Skye glanced up. 1 second, 2 seconds, then bent over her work again. That done. And who cares if Skye is sad? Thought Batty. She soldiered on into the kitchen for the quesadillas. She got down 2 of them, and the food propped her up enough that she hardly noticed when Jane breezed through looking for pretzels. Now to tackle Ben about the twins. She went outside, hunting for him. She heard him before she saw him, from somewhere behind the hydrangeas. "You can play with the Chinook," he said, "and this is the sound it makes. Shwoof, 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 shwoof." Batty peered through the stalks. Good grief, it was Lydia back there, waving Ben's Chinook in the air. Ben never, ever let her play with his action figures. "Lydia, are you bothering Ben?" she asked. Ben answered, with a shade of embarrassment. "No, she's okay. The Chinook is already missing some rotor blades. I won't let her touch the Blackhawk." "Lydia is the army," said Lydia. Batty's surprise at this cooperation between her 2 younger siblings must have shown in her expression, because Ben offered an explanation. "You know, the quesadilla smashed on Oliver," he said, "plus that Spanish thing she yelled at him." "No me gusta," said Lydia obligingly. "It was cool," Ben beamed proudly. "When Oliver left, neither Lydia or I said goodbye. I thought you went to be there not to say goodbye too, but Rosalind said you were still in bed." "Why were you in bed all day anyway?" "Everybody thought you were sick, and I called Raphael, and he said maybe you were bitten by a tsetse fly and dying of sleeping sickness." Batty pushed her way through the bushes and sat down with them. "You can see that I'm not dying. Anyway, there are no tsetse flies in Massachusetts." "Are you sure?" Ben was used to her being healthy, except for that time a few years ago when she'd gone into the hospital to have her tonsils out. He hadn't liked that at all. "Yes, I'm sure. We learned about them in science." They'd studied bugs that March. Vasudev had done his report on tsetse flies, glorying in the details of their lethal bite. Kiko had chosen crickets, and Batty ladybugs. Strange, she thought, how that ladybug report seemed to have happened a very long time ago. Right, because that had happened to before Batty. "Then why did you sleep so much? You missed lunch and everything." "I'll explain, but I have to call mops. But just us, no Skye or Jane." "Then it's not a mops," said Ben. Among the mop's rules was one about not leaving people out. You're right. But since it's just for you and me and Lydia, since she's here, I guess we call it a meeting of the younger Penderwicks siblings. A moips. Well, can you tell me that you can't tell Sky and Jane? Asked Ben, suspicious. I can't tell you until we swear secrecy, obviously. This better not be about dying, because you already said you weren't. Anyway, Lydia doesn't know how to do the swearing part, or how to keep secrets. We'll teach her the swearing part, and I'm not worried about her and secrets. Nothing she repeats ever makes sense, said Batty. Lydia, put down the chinook and face this way. Good. Moips, come to order. Second the motion, said Ben with a marked lack of enthusiasm. I'll swear to keep secret what we say here, even from the parents and also from the older sisters. Batty made her right hand into a fist and held it out toward Ben, who put his fist on top of hers. Now you, Lydia, make a fist. It took a while to persuade Lydia to make a fist, and then, once she'd made it, not to punch it in the air like a winning athlete. No one knew where she'd learned that. But eventually her little hand ended up on the top of the pile, and Batty and Ben could chant the oath. This I swear by the Penderwick family honor, they said, then broke apart the fist pile. Here's why I slept late, said Batty. I woke up really early this morning, took a walk in Quigley Woods, got lost, hurt my ankle a little bit, but it's much better now. Found a way out of the woods, called Nick, he picked me up in his truck, and I came home and went to sleep again. The end. Except there were these twins. Ben interrupted her. You're going too fast. Why did you get up so early? Batty hadn't counted on questions. How could she possibly explain her pre-dawn madness? I had a lot on my mind. Like what? Like, she picked up the chinook and flew it around for a while, but her thoughts weren't coming together. Ben, do you ever think about your dad? You know, not Daddy, but the one whose genes you have? Jeans! Lydia pointed to Ben's denim-encased legs. Jeans, not jeans, said Ben. Jeans, repeated Lydia happily. No, Lydia, you don't understand, said Ben. My first father died in a car accident before I was born, and then Mom and Dad got married, and Dad adopted me. And I do think about my first father. Mom's told me lots of stories about him. Right, Batty used, putting the chinook down, slowly, carefully, to get control of the tears that threatened to spill. Why are you talking about my dad? And what's wrong with your stomach? You keep touching it like this. Ben put his hand on his own stomach, where his knot would be if he had one. Nothing's wrong with my stomach. Batty sat on her hand to keep it from betraying her. So I was lost in Quigley Woods, hurt my ankle, and called Nick to come get me. And there were these twins. Twins! Lydia loved this game. But Ben was still trying to catch up. How did you know Nick's number? He gave it to me. Batty rolled up her sleeve to show him, in case we needed help with Oliver. Oh, Ben really wanted Nick's number written on his arm, too. So there were these twins. Batty paused to let Lydia say twins again, but this time she just stared unheedingly. Named Tess and Nora and Ben. They know you. Me? Batty got the twins' drawings out of her pocket and handed them to Ben, who laboriously unfolded them. What are these hearts? Hearts, said Lydia gaily. She'd gotten hold of the Dexter, also known as Spike action figure, and was having him climb up the side of the house. And is this supposed to be you? He handed one of them back to Batty. The drawing indeed contained lots of red hearts and lots of flowers, plus one unattractive stick figure with wild hair, huge boots, and Batty written beside it. Yes, that's me. I looked a little strange, and I don't know why there are hearts. Maybe she likes you. There are hearts on the other one, too. How can they like me? I don't even know them. Batty thought of Kiko and Ryan, the movie star. It happens sometimes. Here, Lydia, you can tear these up if you want to. Ben passed the drawings to Lydia, who jabbed them to pieces with Dexter and buried the results under a rock. Okay, good, said Batty. Thus ends the moips. What? Ben protested. We're done? This was the weirdest meeting ever. I'm sorry, Ben. It's the best I can do right now. This time, the dream was about school. Nick was visiting the 5th grade to explain that book report charts were an accurate measure of one's inner worthiness. The class gave 3 cheers for Ginevra and her inner worthiness, and 3 boos for Batty, who Nick said had the worthiness of a worm. When Batty tried to stand up for herself, but mostly for worms because worms are as worthy as anyone else, Nick interrupted to announce that they would now sing The Itsy Bitsy Spider in French, which everyone but Batty could speak. Halfway through the song, Batty managed to fight her way out of French spiders and into wakefulness, which at first presented another confusion, since she wasn't in her own room, but in Lydia's. And then she remembered that Lydia had pleaded for her to stay another night, in the apparent belief that she would be able to hold on to the safety of the crib as long as Batty slept in the big girl bed. So here Batty was again, awake while everyone else in the house slept, just like she'd been the night before, or actually that morning, or... She looked at the clock. It was almost 2 a.m. Since this morning again, that had been yesterday morning. With all these extra wakings and sleepings, she was losing track of which day was what. This is very early Monday morning, she told herself, which means I need to get back to sleep so I can get up again in 5 hours to get ready for school. Sleep, however, was not so easily bidden. Not after bad dreams and not with awful ache in her middle. Batty let her gaze drift around the room, hoping for distraction from her woes. The hound constellation, Lydia on her back, clutching baby Zingo in one arm, and Geoffrey's pink rabbit in the other. A duck nightlight casting strange shadows across the walls and onto the framed photographs on Lydia's dresser. One photograph showed Lydia's class at Goldie's, with the beaming Lydia surrounded by her friends, Zena, Geordie, Grady, and Lucy. A second was of Asimov, trying to remove the doll sweater Lydia had just put onto his head. And a third, Batty got out of bed to look more closely at this one. Her favorite of the 3 was from Lydia was only a week old. Still just a tiny lump of a person who was being held up to the camera by Iantha. They were in the front yard, under the maple tree, and the sun was shining, and Iantha was smiling, and her red hair was blowing. Batty leaned in and looked more closely, noticing something she never had before. What was that? Just where the picture went into the frame. She turned on the bureau lamp for more light. Why, it was a hand. And though it was only a hand cut off at the wrist, Batty suddenly remembered that day, and how she'd been standing off to one side waving at the new baby. It was her own hand. She turned off the light and turned away then, her stomach throbbing. Stupid girl, she told herself, to be upset because she'd been left out of a photo. She'd been left out of plenty of photos before. And I've been in plenty too, she told the room. Batty waited, listening. But the room offered nothing back, not from the sleeping Lydia, the ducklight, or even from the hound constellation. All right, I'll prove it to you. She turned off the bureau light and made her way downstairs to her parents' study. There were her father's bookshelves, crammed with hundreds of biology texts, with impossible titles, and way up, at the end of the top shelf, was a box. To reach that high, she dragged over a chair, and even with the chair, she had to stretch up on her toes. There were a few seconds of uncertainty, the box wobbling at the tip of her outstretched fingers, but Batty's determination won out, and soon she and the box were down on the floor, sitting in a pool of light cast by her father's desk lamp. Pictures. That's what was written on the lid. More recent family photographs. Ones taken since Iantha's arrival, were neatly stored in albums. The opposite of those albums, this box, was a delirious jumble of the 4 sisters' years before Iantha. Batty had looked through it several months earlier for pictures of Hound, especially for that perfect one she remembered, but had probably made up. But tonight, she was looking for something different, though what it was she wasn't exactly sure. She dove in, at first, scanning each picture carefully, leaping higgledy-piggledy from one year to another, Summer to winter, Christmas to 4th of July, first days of school to last. Many of the pictures did include her. Batty with paint on her face in kindergarten. Batty dressed as a clam for the 3rd grade play. Batty with Hound and Funty in the red wagon. "See that?" she said to herself. "You weren't always left out." But something kept her digging into the box. Though after a while she went more quickly, she was getting tired and there were so many pictures. Maybe she wearied of seeing her mother with Rosalind, her mother with Skye, her mother with Jane. But wait, here was one of Hound as a puppy. Batty held it up for a long look, just as she'd done the last time through the box. In the photo, Hound was still so tiny that Skye could hold him in her arms. A young and pigtailed Skye, clutching him and beaming. Then, just like the last time, Batty decided she wouldn't take this one up to her room. It belonged to Skye, not Batty, if Skye ever wanted it. Batty went even more quickly now, past vacation, pictures, sports pictures, on and on, until there, at almost the bottom of the box, finally she found what she now knew she'd come looking for. A photograph of her mother in a hospital bed, looking so thin and weak that the resemblance to Skye was almost gone. But she was smiling and proudly cuddling the baby who had been brought into the world at such a great price. Who was to say if the price had been too great? Batty alone in the night, staring at the only photograph she'd ever seen of herself with her mother, couldn't know, and she had no one to ask. Exhaustion swooped in, and she needed to return to bed before falling asleep right there on the floor. Batty piled the pictures back into the box, except for the most precious one. That was hers now, and maneuvered the box back onto its high shelf, and the chair back to her father's desk. She would leave the study just as she'd found it, so that no one would know she'd been searching. Then she took the purloined photograph upstairs to her room and slid it under Hound's canvas bag at the back of her closet. Another secret, carefully hidden. She was caught as she left her room to go back to Lydia's. Ben, who could usually sleep through anything, must have heard her, because suddenly there he was in the hall, only half awake. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Nothing. Go back to bed." "You're sleepwalking, aren't you?" Ben's look of alarm filled her with guilt. "Maybe you do have that tsetse fly thing after all." "Ben, don't be silly. I'm fine. Really, I am. But go back to bed now." His face scrunched with concern, Ben disappeared back into his room. And that is the end of chapter 16.